All right. Well,
Game on. You introduce it.
Come on, let's do it.
welcome back to the Feronus Podcast. This is episode 4. My name is Justin Kubeck. With me I have
Rico Camacho.
and
Bill Stewart?
Bill Stewart is a licensed clinical social worker. Did I get that right?
Correct, yes.
And you're going to have to remind me, Impact is the name of your practice?
I own a therapy clinic in Kenosha, Wisconsin called Impact Child and Family Therapies, and it's a mouthful.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that mouthful?
I opened Impact Child and Family Therapies in June of 2013. I've been a mental health provider for over 20 years now. I got my bachelor's degree in 1997. I went back to get my master's from 2000 to 2003. In 2005, I got a clinical license. I became an LCSW, and I worked for various different clinics. I've worked within mental health. I've worked within foster care and adoption services. I've worked in group homes, residential treatment centers. I did a stint in special education and worked as a teacher, a teacher's assistant. And then I found a clinic in Milwaukee that provided in-home therapy, and it billed through insurance companies, but I would go to kids' homes and go to families' homes and work with them in their communities.
Cool.
And I always found that really powerful.
Yeah.
It's one thing to go to a clinic and meet your doctor at their office, but to have the provider come to the house and hang out in the backyard or walk to the park, I thought it was a really powerful way of interacting with kids, especially. And I just magically met a woman who was another provider looking to open up a clinic, but needed someone with like trauma experience. She had a lot of autism spectrum disorder experience. And without getting too much into it right now, there's a lot of kind of overlapping symptoms between autism spectrum and trauma on the surface. And so I started contracting with her.
Quick. So you said that there's a lot of overlap. Do you mean just like behaviors, or do you mean like
Sort
trauma?
of, yeah. No, not comorbid symptoms. So Justin's gonna have to do the Ross Geller to keep my voice down.
I know Rico's the teacher, but I'm going to have to play teacher.
Well, I'm going to be real loud too.
We're gonna do this. Kids that have experienced trauma and have attachment disorders and kids on the spectrum, both have struggled with like understanding verbal cues.
So that's
misreading nonverbal cues, lacking empathy for other people.
So that's a really interesting, something I'd love to dive into for a second, is because one thing, even as a teacher, I hear what I call pop culture mental health from all my students. Oh my God, I have bipolar disorder. Well, do you really have? I don't think you can self-diagnose yourself.
No,
that's a bad
you
idea.
can't.
So,
well, I think we all self-diagnose ourselves, and then we have everything, right? You're at the gas station pumping gas, and you're like, great, now I have this.
Right.
Because you saw some commercial.
So, right. And so I guess my question is so from the perspective of like, you can't pigeonhole a certain behavior or something in order to say you have something as an excuse for why you're behaving some way. Am I asking that right?
I like the way you asked that, and I think there's two different answers that I can give you. We shouldn't be self-diagnosing anything. We should seek out professional diagnoses. Just because just because you have a hard time focusing doesn't mean you have ADHD.
Right.
Just because you're sad about something doesn't mean you're depressed. There's a whole clinical underlying component to that.
One thing I would like to highlight on that point, though, and we talked about this a little bit last episode, some of these diagnoses are almost like a sign of privilege. Like, you happen to have enough money to afford the testing, or you were living in a decent area with parents who had jobs that had the right insurance to cover that stuff, or whatever it might be.
I'll give it to us. I can tell your wheels are turning.
I'm like, how do I answer this appropriately and professionally? I don't want to say there. I think it's a double-edged sword, because I think you're right. I think to some degree, well, and as a therapist who's older, and maybe this is my Gen X side coming out.
Oh, here we go.
Having a mental health diagnosis will explain why you have challenges and explain why things are difficult, but I don't think it's an excuse to behave a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so, because you have anxiety or depression doesn't mean it's okay to be rude to your friends or whatever.
Right.
People still have a responsibility for identifying their challenges, their mental health diagnoses, and seeking the help and helping themselves through it. And help is help. Help isn't, I'm going to do it for you. And so
thank you.
I have bipolar disorder, so I need you to do these things for me. I have bipolar disorder, these are my challenges, and this is how you can help me. But ultimately, the person's responsible for themselves. I think in some way, like the double-edged sword would be that there is a badge, so to speak, if I have anxiety or I have bipolar disorder or whatever. And I think it helps people having an answer and having a label. I've always, as a provider, not really liked the labels myself. Like,
I'm with you on.
we can say you have ADHD, we can say you have bipolar, but my job is to treat the symptoms.
Yes.
And work with the symptoms, not like the disorder. But I think there's a peace of mind in helping people with that label, and there's a community to it that's positive. So,
Well, and I find that it's interesting and even for me frustrating because a lot of people, I hate labels. I hate them. And that's a strong word. So strongly dislike labels. Let's try that again. But like within the concept of labels, that I think that gives people, yes, I'm gonna argue because I'm not a professional, a false sense of safety. The reason is because I've seen so many people say, I'm doing this because of this. And it's like, well, you're doing this. I get it. There's a challenge there.
Yeah.
However, you still get a choice on how you decide to react to a certain.
right.
Well, it's that difference between an excuse and an explanation,
Correct.
and and what your crutch is.
Yeah, bipolar, and you made me mad, so I punched you.
Therefore, it's okay.
I still punched you, and I still have consequences for punching you,
Right.
regardless of what my diagnosis is. But I think in some way, I think one of the real challenges with mental health for people is feeling alone and isolated.
Yeah.
No one understands me, no one
Right.
gets it. And I think the positivity of that label and that diagnosis is finding other people that share that. You have bipolar, so do I. This is how it's different. But I'll often say I could take 10 kids that are all 9 years old, all boys, and all have ADHD,
Right.
and they are 10 very different children.
people. Yes.
And so you can't, just saying I have ADHD or I have autism, there's profound differences, and there's still so many individual
Right.
differences in there. One of the, I don't know if this answers any question. I feel like I went on a tangent. And
Oh no, you're answering all. I think that this
But
is
like,
complex.
That's how the show worked.
Right on. It's a fluid conversation. It's a,
It is.
what did Freud say? The stream of consciousness.
Yes.
Freud.
Childhood mental health issues can be really complicated because there's over a dozen different mental health diagnoses, and this kind of goes back to that comorbidity. Kids, early onset stuff for children, even as young as 2 years old, can be autism spectrum, which used to get confused for kids being deaf or blind.
Mhm.
My son's deaf, my son's blind. No, they're not. They have autism, and that's why they're not responding
Right.
to your verbal cues. But there's kids that are young have ADHD. Kids that are young can suffer from depression or anxiety. If there's a traumatic experience in their life, they can have trauma symptoms, PTSD symptoms. There's a plethora of diagnoses that children can be given, but their behaviors all look very similar. So you could look at maybe a 7 or 8 year old child who has a hard time sitting still and they're fidgety, and they can be hostile and aggressive when they're upset. And they're inflexible and rigid and they don't transition really well from one activity to the other. They could be explosive. They can have a really hard time at school. And it sounds like ADHD and it looks like ADHD, but like young kids with depression will look like ADHD. Young kids with anxiety will look like ADHD. And it requires further digging into what's creating it and what's causing it. If you give a child an ADHD medication and they show improvement, then okay, maybe ADHD is a diagnosis.
Right.
If you give a kid ADHD meds and they're getting worse, we need to look at anxiety, we need to look at depression. And again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't do anything with medications.
Right.
But I've seen a lot of kids diagnosed with ADHD where when you get to know them and spend some time with them, it's anxiety.
And
an anti-anxiety med, a really mild one like buspirone, can help a kid alleviate ADHD symptoms. Again, I have to be careful recommending that because I'm not a psychiatrist, but just in my experience, I've seen that.
We're not giving any medical advice on
No.
this. So
yeah, definitely.
And so it's challenging. And I think the other challenge, I was just talking about this with someone today too, is therapy, mental health services and therapy really only work if you, as a consumer, recognize the deficit and recognize a need for change. You can't force someone into therapy. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm not going to get better. It's hard to get that person to maybe make changes. And so therapy really only works when someone recognizes a need for change and recognizes their deficits and wants to improve their life. Children don't do that. No 7-year-old is at school.
Like, change my life.
I really need to talk to a therapist because I really get angry about my math homework and I really wish I wouldn't. Like kids are not, they're in therapy because their parents want them to be in therapy.
But then
their parents recognize that challenge.
And that must be one of the toughest things for you as a therapist to have, I don't want to say forced you, but almost have to take those, anybody who's required to do therapy, whether that be court ordered or whether that be a child saying, you know, and even goes back to Justin's theory behind, only the rich receive certain therapies that the poor don't. And so, and I said theory, but what I mean by that too is no matter the circumstance in which the person is required to be there, well, again, that must, how do you handle something like that with someone who doesn't want to be there? You know, they're for, and I'm talking even simple body language and tone. Like, I don't want to be here. The court's making me here. I don't want to be here. My mom's making me be here. What's the difference between mom and court sometimes? Let me tell you. Right. So, you know.
Everyone's the problem.
Exactly. So I'm trying. How do you deal with that?
I know how I deal with it.
But yeah, you specifically.
As a provider, I have been saying it for decades, especially when you're working with children, they have to trust you. A child has to trust you. And in building that trust, they have to like you. They have to think you're cool. They have to think you're interesting. One of my early jobs in mental health was in Illinois for like a gang and crime diversion program.
Okay.
And so we worked with kids who were gang involved.
Right.
And at risk of being sentenced to the juvenile corrections, you know, year 3 or 5 years or whatever in the Department of Corrections. And I'm not going to show up to some kid's house in a shirt and a tie and be like, you need to tell me what's going on. I'm going to show up at their house and be like, hey, we're going to have to hang out together. You want to play basketball? What do you like to do? You like to play video games? Let's go play video games. Let's go grab some McDonald's. Let's go hang out. Let's get to know each other. And it's building a relationship with kids. It's getting to know them. And even saying, either saying in your behaviors or verbally saying, like, you are a person more than what I read on paper. You're more than those police charges. You're more than what got you in trouble. You're more than this or that. And I want to get to know you. And and even with little kids, they're receptive to that. If a kid likes you, if they think you're cool, they want to spend time with you, they want to hang out with you, and they're going to develop trust in you, and they're going to feel comfortable talking about stuff. And then that's kind of my job. Is not to say you have to talk to me about these things. It's let's hang out, let's get to know each other, let's play board games. And it really helps to be a 50-year-old kid still. I play Pokemon Go and I play Magic and I play video games and I love Star Wars and I'm a nerd. Like, and it helps, you know, to what do you like to do? Let's do it together. Let's draw, let's color.
Right.
And just giving children that receptivity. And in doing so, you're also like unconsciously kind of saying, like, I'm not judging you. You know, mom and dad say you're bad. School says you're bad. I don't think you're bad.
Going back to labels, you're good or you're bad. When nobody's either good or bad.
That's a huge thing with kids. Yeah. And kids don't want to talk about, they're not comfortable talking about things because they don't want to be a bad kid. I got in trouble. I told a lie. I did this or that. And I don't want to be bad. So I'm going to avoid the conversation. I don't want to talk about it or whatever they do. And just approaching them genuinely. Because
also then boils down to the feeling of how they feel around you. Because I feel as though like you said, if they're already coming in, and that's huge because what you're doing is you're essentially breaking down the barrier of, you know, feelings. Okay, you feel unworthy. You feel powerless. You feel these because this is for lack of better words, societal label. You're bad because these are the consequences to what you did. You. Let's have a blame-ridden society.
We do. Where we punish bad behavior, and that's kind of how we operate as a society. You're in trouble for being bad.
And I almost feel like we don't necessarily
or incarceration or suspension from schools, right?
And we don't do enough rewarding in our system, almost, unless you're. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, I've seen people get awards, but it seems so few and far between that there's more people incarcerated that are receiving awards, even from a city or a state or, you know. And so it's, you know, I bet you I could find some of the most affluent criminals, but I have no idea who won a Purple Heart recently. You know what I mean? That's wild to me. You know, even Nobel Prizes, I don't think people know off the top of their head. Okay, this year was the blank who won this. Yeah, I'm even saying blank. I don't know. But, you know, you talk about Slenderman killings in Waukesha. Oh, I know that person.
I heard that,
I
yeah.
heard that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, as a society,
The positive things don't resonate with us like negative things do.
correct.
So, I mean, if you think back to your childhood, and I'm not saying you
I
necessarily,
get it.
but
I get it. I get it.
you know, we could go back and think of happy memories. I don't think they stick with us, but I can remember that kid that bullied me in 3rd grade.
Right.
I can remember that time that my dad was pissed at me because I did something.
Well,
And that negative stuff just seems to resonate with us as humans so much more than those positive things. And those positive moments can be so fleeting.
Right.
Well, I've talked to my mom about this topic before, and I brought up some of the trauma of my childhood with her as we've unpacked that as I've gotten older. She asked me kind of a similar question. She's like, it seems like you only remember the bad stuff, or you focus so heavily on the bad stuff. And I was like, okay, so let's take event X, and it was super traumatic for me, but for you it was just another Tuesday.
Right.
And so, of course, it's going to be a huge, core memory for me because I was 8 years old and that was the worst day of my life to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, I'm going to remember that stuff more than the good times because on the good times, it was just another Tuesday,
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that because one thing I've looked at in my education for education, if that makes sense, is
Being taught to be a teacher.
yeah, right. How do you focus, return, because life is about perception and perspective. Okay, everybody has a point of view on something. And that's where we get the labels of good or bad. I punched you, that's bad. However, now let's flip the script a little bit and say I punched you because you were trying to kidnap my daughter. Was that bad anymore? Now we have a different perspective on it, right?
Context
So
matters.
not
a rabbit hole.
right. And I'm going down
It's one of these podcasts.
Yeah, well, done did it. So, but my
I'll switch topics soon, don't worry.
No. No, this is awesome. We can talk for hours, man.
Probably.
This is good.
I promise.
Am I in the mic okay? I lean
yeah,
back
you're
I'm leaning back.
to regulate my voice.
So what my point is that how do we, and I think it's a lot with the work you're doing is, and the people we have on the show that they're doing, how do we change a mentality to refocus from, first of all, that whole concept behind, is it really, you have a perspective, you did something based on a perspective you have, and now let's shift your perspective to even positive. So now let's go less dramatic, shall we? And go, okay, you stole some food from the grocery store. Well, I'm telling you, with the prices they are today, I'm either going to eat or not eat. And if I'm going to get in trouble for stealing food, of all things, because me and my family are hungry, because we can't afford food, that again goes back to a whole, are you really bad, right?
Yeah.
So how do we focus our attention on the positive and really, and I'm not saying stealing is positive, but just positive, and take those negative experiences and be like, you know what, these are actually a good thing for me because I learned something, or just starting that shift.
Well, and the way that I've talked about it before is, and it's gone. I love ADHD sometimes.
Bingo.
There it is. So what do you think? Take it away.
There is a lot of what ifs in that scenario.
Correct.
It globally requires everybody to adopt a whole new mentality
Correct.
of presuming that other people are behaving out of ignorance and not intention. You did something bad to me. You cut me off in traffic, and you didn't do it because you were mad at me and wanted to cut me off, but you weren't paying attention, or you're late to work.
I love how
And
we went less dramatic
We
on
all
examples.
need to. I know that's the one that popped in my head.
That's good.
That's
That's
like
good.
my trigger when I'm driving. So that's where I need to learn how to
Right.
go. But we all as a society need to adopt this mentality that people do things for reasons. Behavior is functional, and we're not going to ever get better if we don't address the function of behavior. And I do that a lot with working with the parents of the children we work with. And your son or daughter is not a bad kid, but there are bad choices and there are good choices. And there are obviously consequences for bad behavior. If your kid punches a hole in the wall, they need to reimburse you for the hole, or they need to sit down with you one day and learn how to drywall and patch the hole. Discipline should be corrective. It shouldn't be punishment, because we're not learning the right thing to do when we only punish the wrong thing to do. But it requires a global change in how we think about things. And the hitting is still bad, but let's talk about, why did you hit? And I know we're going to talk about the reptile groups, but that's, something we talk about is that function of behavior. I hit because I was scared. I hit because I was angry. And people, I would argue still, people can change. And I would argue that giving people the grace to learn from their mistakes and rectify their mistakes.
Right.
I wish as a society we would do more of that
One thing
as
you
well.
said specifically that I absolutely love is I don't think we can believe we change. I think we just change, irrelevant to what you think.
Oh, yeah.
Every second of every day. Now, you could choose to keep the same pattern of behavior if that's what
Right.
you want, but at the end of the day, you're still changing. So whether what I'm trying to get less dramatic. I promise I'll find examples of less
No, you're
dramatic.
good. You're good.
But if
I'm on my toes. You got me on my toes. Because
I were to be able to, okay, maybe this won't be too bad, but a person.
I punched a priest in the throat.
I'll start teaching at Catholic Memorial. Be careful.
They're not going to let me rent this room.
I went really.
I love it. I think that's fantastic.
Sorry.
this is where.
Didn't mean to throw you out.
No, this is great. Sorry, bud. To Europe.
You're just giving me ideas for more stickers.
Oh God! Should a priest in the throat?
I don't know why that's the thing that came in my head either. I apologize.
So let me get my thoughts together now. No, if you were to my point is the things I do as a young kid may not be will have the same. I may have done the same thing as I'm older, but I'll have a different reaction. I'll have a different understanding of what I did. So even something as okay, this came up recently with the city. One of the issues we have people urinating in this, like literally anywhere they want because some of the homeless issues that are going on, right?
Yeah.
Now, a little kid chooses to act, go to the bathroom in public. We go, oh, no, this isn't the appropriate place.
Yeah.
There's that and the third, whatever, Then you go as a grown adult at 45 years old doing the same thing, and how dare you? What is wrong? And even
You go to jail for peeing.
right, but that person also may not have understood that because they didn't develop the same way we did at that child level, which you were speaking to before. See, I went less dramatic. Aren't we proud of
You did. That was a
I'm
really
proud
good.
of- Oh,
No, that was a really good example because we punish the man who pees in the sidewalk in a similar way we punish the guy who robs a bank or
yes,
assaults a woman on the street. Like,
exactly. But as a child, it's a
Yeah.
whole different mentality.
Yeah.
Now, that goes back to my point of we all change.
Right.
However, the differences in how we react and the differences in reaction and the difference in feelings always changes.
Well, and the way that we've talked about this, or I've talked about this before, is like reactionary services versus preventative services,
Yeah.
right? Do you give therapy to the victim of the bully, or do you try to provide services to the bully before he ever becomes a bully?
and the answer to that question is yes.
Well,
Yes.
right. And that's what it came
Yes.
to last time.
You tried to do both.
Yeah. But it's important to do both.
Why is a
because-
kid bullying? What triggers a child to make those choices?
Right. Well,
Well, and
Living
it goes
environments
even
or family stress.
I love what you said earlier. It goes down further with when you said we were going down the rabbit hole. I think the entire concept surrounding mental health is a rabbit hole. There is no real. I mean,
There's no cut or dry answer.
No, and you get like you said it very well at the beginning when you said I can have 9 boys at the same age with ADHD. They're all going to act different.
Yes.
There isn't going to be a 2 + 2 = 4.
No.
So no matter what we do, and in this podcast and in your profession in particular, we're never going to get it quote unquote right because there is no right or wrong.
Right.
You can't do it.
Well, and if there's 10 different kids who all manifest ADHD differently, they're not going to respond the same to the same treatment.
Correct, but you said 9 earlier. Let's
Yeah.
give us
Nine.
a little.
Okay. Sorry, did I say?
Yeah, and we are not going with
9-year-olds?
Leave us our 9. All right, no, I'm kidding.
I won't go back to you. Yeah, it's challenging work. It's gratifying work, but going back to your other question too, it's helping parents understand that there's a function for behavior and you can punish the behavior without punishing the child.
Yes.
You're a bad kid, you're horrible. Why did you do something like that?
Well, and
There's a whole different thing than saying, why did you do that?
Right.
Well, and looking past the behavior, whether it's a child acting up in school or
Yeah.
somebody stealing food from a grocery store or a homeless person, urinating outside, right? There's reasons behind the majority of those things. And most of the time it's not malice. It's not
No.
bad intentions. It's not because somebody wanted to ruin somebody else's day. I mean, I spent a lot of years working in downtown Waukesha, and I can think of at least a handful of times where I saw homeless people acting up, so they had a warm place to sleep that night because they had
Right.
been taken into the jail.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of my, it was on the tip of my tongue and now I lost it.
Oh, wow, we're getting good at this.
Yeah.
You got ADHD too?
I probably do.
Don't we all?
Oh, yeah. And it's, I guess you didn't ask this, but it popped in my head that like one of my pet peeves as a therapist, I think, is when people say that kids are behaving because they just want attention.
Oh,
Well, he's doing it because he wants attention. Then give him attention.
attention.
Like,
That was easy. Oh,
yeah.
I'll be make
If
me
he needs
excited.
attention, give him attention.
Game on. Hey, what do you want to do?
Exactly. And reminding people that children needing attention is as important as food and water. When you're a child, when you're an infant and
What do you mean? I'm an adult and I still
You
want to
can't-
tell. What are you
yeah.
talking about?
you can't do anything for yourself. You need adults to change your diapers.
Right.
Your life is dependent on that.
Okay, don't need
And
that.
you
I just
develop
want
trust in that. We're not changing your diapers right now. The thing is, I mean, I'm not shaming anybody for their thing.
I know.
But like humans develop trust and that safety feeling in each other when baby cries, mom picks up baby, cuddles baby,
Right,
nurses baby.
right.
There's oxytocin is the chemical that both mom and baby get that help develop their brain and help them grow. It's that happy chemical. And they learn to trust adults. Adults are going to take care of us. And if they don't get that, then it leads to attachment disorders, behavioral disruptions, or whatever. And it's and kids need attention. They thrive on attention, and it's just as important to them. So if your kid needs attention, why are they needing attention? Why are you not giving them attention? Some kids are ignored when they behave, and then they're attended to when they misbehave.
Well, it's really
Dad
interesting.
ignores me when I'm fine, when I'm doing my own thing and I'm behaving, and my dad doesn't pay attention to me. But when I do something wrong, Dad pays attention to me. So I'm going to do something wrong on purpose to get
Yeah,
Dad to at least pay attention to me.
Well-
I would rather get in trouble than be ignored.
And I love that.
I had to finish that thought.
No, you're good. I'm so sorry because you just made me
No,
want to
you're
jump
good.
in. Especially because what happened is, I don't know, I read this book, Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart.
I haven't read that yet, but she's awesome.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
And she, what is it, a PhD in psychotherapy? I think?
Something I think
Something
so,
like
yeah.
that. But you just reminded me of that attention thing, because what she was arguing in her book Atlas of the Heart is, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the age, we are always changing, but there are certain things. Attention, even for that, if I remember correctly, she said in her book, like, that's one of the main reasons for divorce, is because of attention, even in adults.
Yeah.
So not just kids, but
Yeah.
I love what you said with kids. But I mean, sometimes, you argue with somebody simply as an adult in those adult dynamics
Yeah.
because you want attention, and then you have this whole pop culture concept of toxic relationships.
Yeah.
When it's like, whoa, look within yourself. What's going on? What do you need?
Yeah.
So you can express it in a non-toxic way.
Yeah, we don't want to go to work and have a boss or be in a relationship and have a partner that is screaming and yelling at us all the time and demanding we do this and nothing we do is good enough.
Right.
But that's how we treat our kids.
Right.
Like
Or-
what?
Or ignore
And they're supposed to be okay with that? Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, go to work and have your boss ignore you when you're doing your job and then just berate you when you're not. And
That sounds terrible.
in berating you for not doing your job, you're not saying what I'm doing wrong. What am I supposed to do differently? I'm getting on a side tangent, but going kind of back full circle in breaking through with some of those kids and not being, consumers necessarily. No 7-year-old kid wants to have a therapist,
Right.
but that simple, I hear you. I understand what you're going through. I'm listening to you and I'm validating your feelings is so powerful in and of itself. And you don't have to be a therapist to do that.
The way that I talk about that idea is simply first treat somebody like a person.
Yeah.
In whatever scenario, whether you're approaching a child or an adult, treat them like a person
We
first.
just did it 5 minutes ago with those kids that walked past and
yeah.
were looking at us and we smiled and waved at them and they waved and smiled back.
Yeah.
That icebreaker alone was powerful, right?
Absolutely.
That's all you got to do sometimes. What are you doing? Legos? Oh, shit. I love Lego. Let's do Legos. What's your name? Nice to meet you.
I do love Legos.
So,
I don't.
Legos are extremely therapeutic.
I
Legos
know,
are
and I'm
very
bad. You want to know why I hate Legos? I'm bad at it.
Really?
Oh, I'm really bad at Legos. I don't know how you're bad at Legos, but I'm really good at being bad
Did
at
you
Legos.
wait? No.
Are you following the instructions? Okay, step 2, step 3, or are you improvising creative land Lego?
Totally
Wait, we
improvisation.
just talked a whole bunch about labels. If you are bad at Legos, what does it mean to be good at Legos, sir?
It means you enjoy it.
It doesn't mean you're a bad person. So Just there might be things that you're good at,
Free
and there
therapy.
might be things
Two
that
episodes in
you
a row.
need to try harder. I am really good at this naturally. I'm really good at that naturally. I am not good at this, and I need to try harder if I want to be good at it. And anything sports and athletic related, I do not need to be good at. I will watch everyone else do
Oh,
it.
see, I love that. That's my jam.
You might need some practice. Let's look at where the barriers are and why you're not good at Legos.
Right.
Do you want to be better at Legos? I'm your therapist.
I was gonna say, I love
Is
everything.
being good at Legos something you want to do?
No.
I did meet somebody.
Sorry, can I swear in this fucking?
Oh, I edited it.
I don't get to swear in work.
Guys, I think we should allow. I motion we allow.
It will beat me.
I don't think that's a good idea.
No, that was cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love that. So actually, that's a decent transition as well, is because we were talking about Legos
Oh,
and
you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been good.
you were talking
I'm
about
an
like
unruly guest.
yeah, that's fine. I'm an unruly host. It works. So, the transition from Legos, particularly to what you do with reptiles, because you were talking about the whole concept of something that you can hold tangibly in order to help all of the concepts. So you have Legos, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with basketball and soccer because that's kind of my
Sports are so good for
My
kids.
thing.
They're
I'm-
so healthy for kids.
I'm in
so
the
many
boat
different ways.
with Bill because that's where I know Bill from. We used to-
Legos.
Reptile.
Oh, like Legos.
We could if you wanted.
I knew Justin was into Legos 3 minutes ago. I never knew that about him.
Now you just broke my heart.
But he found out I was in the reptiles in what, 2013 or
2013, 2012 is when I
Got it.
Yeah.
2012.
Yeah, 2012?
2013.
Okay.
So I want to know. So explain what you
It's
do with
been
the
an
reptiles.
incredibly crazy journey for me. So I opened Impact in 2013, but I've been a mental health provider forever. Even in the late 90s, I was working at a daycare in Chicago for special needs kids with ADHD while I was getting my bachelor's. So 1994 was my first official, I'm getting a paycheck to work with kids kind of a job.
I was 10.
I'm old. I know.
I was one, actually.
Wow, you guys. Were you at my daycare?
I was not.
But I've kept reptiles since I was a kid also, and reptiles have always been fascinating animals to me. They're unbelievably cool. And Justin knows this a little bit more because he's in the reptile hobby. If you talk to 1,000 people that all keep reptiles right now, they all have the same origin story.
Interesting.
We all love dinosaurs, and then we saw a snake. That's the origin story. Dinosaurs, and then I saw a turtle, I saw a snake.
So-
And it hooked us. And I've been hooked ever since.
Snake therapeutic. I've been meaning to ask this since we started this. Like a cobra. All I think
Well, not a cobra.
Sorry, that was a
Actually, wait.
terrible voice.
Pause it. I haven't done this in a long time. This was one of my favorite things to do to people when I was doing shows. Snakes are not inherently a bad thing for all people. It's a very American cultural thing to
So
be
I watched
afraid of
Anaconda too
snakes.
many times. Is that what
More
you're
or
saying?
less.
Yeah.
It is a very American trait. What Bill does and what we're about to discuss is kind of unheard of in America, as far as I'm aware. But I mean, in the UK, you can get massage therapy with boa constrictors and stuff like that.
So I did have a boa around my neck in the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
That was epic.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
That was pretty epic.
Anyway,
Anaconda is not an accurate movie, and the fakest thing about it is that
Oh, I know.
that snake would have swallowed John Voight so much faster than it really did in the movie. It took him way too long to swallow John Voight in that movie.
I love
They're pretty efficient. No, right. Reptiles, snakes especially, have been vilified
Right.
forever. I think, oh my gosh. Okay, so there's a few different reasons why snakes are therapeutic. In one sense, in one way I use snakes as therapy is in that sensory need. I have kids that are nonverbal on the autism spectrum. Kids that have sensory integration issues, which is sensory integration issues is just kind of a fancy word we've thrown around where you have 5 senses and all 5 of your senses are operating properly and all working together to tune into your environment, right? Your sight, your smell, your taste. And we don't use all 5 of them all the time, but we use 3 or 4 at a given time or whatever. Kids with sensory integration issues, their 5 senses aren't all in tune together and all jiving together to sense their environment. And so there are kids that are hypertactile and hypotactile, where you putting your hand on a kid's shoulder, some kids won't even feel it, and they don't feel anything unless you're squeezing them. Or some kids just barely touching their shoulder feels like needles in their shoulder. And so separate from any mental health diagnosis,
Right.
there's a lot of kids that just have issues with sensory integration. Certain fabrics feel weird. Certain clothes feel weird. Socks don't feel weird. You'll see kids with sensory issues that'll put their shoes on the wrong feet on purpose because the way the shoe feels on the foot, they like the pressure and they like there's a lot of sensory stuff. And snakes are very sensory. Their scales, their movement on your shoulders. I have kids that use weighted blankets,
love weighted blankets.
Yeah, weighted blankets or weighted vests on your shoulders. So now I have something that I can put on your shoulders that has that weight, that has that calming effect, but you're interacting with it as well. At the surface level, reptiles are fascinating. If you're not like afraid of them and scared of them, they're interactive and they're fascinating. It's a fidget animal that's alive, you know? And so having a kid who is ADHD maybe and distracted and has a hard time focusing, and you're explaining things to them and it's not receptive because they're not paying attention. They're focused when they're holding a snake. They're focused when they're holding a lizard. They're paying attention to that animal. And they're taking in this sensory information from the snake's scales and their movement. The physical observation of it too, which is really cool. And then there's a really unique interaction when you're holding a snake. And I should have brought a snake and done this, Rico.
That would have been epic.
Like, you're not someone who holds snakes regularly, right? And so if I had a 6-foot boa with me and I put it on your shoulders, you might be a little nervous. You're not used to it, but you're watching the snake's behaviors, right?
Correct.
So you're learning the snake and you're learning to watch the behaviors and you're seeing if it's acting. Snakes that are nervous are going to have tighter muscles. They're going to move quicker. Their tongues are going to flick longer. There are behaviors that the snakes show when they're nervous or kind of defensive, right? Just like people do. And so you are holding the snake and you're learning his behaviors to see. And in that interaction, he's doing the same thing to you. So there's a mutual trust that's being developed between you and the snake, where the snake is looking at your behaviors. Is this man going to hurt me? Is he going to turn me into food? Do I have to be scared? And if you're interacting with him gently and calmly, you're not making sudden movements, you're breathing, you're learning to trust the snake is calming down and acting less tense. The snake is reading your body language. I know it sounds really weird.
No, it actually makes complete sense.
And so, like,
as weird as this
on
sounds.
the reptile side of things, I've adopted snakes that have been profoundly aggressive and have attacked people and bit people because, you know, they're scared. Snakes don't want to hurt you. Snakes don't want to eat you. They're not like sizing you up. Snakes aren't mean. They don't chase you. But they're defensive. They don't want to get hurt. They
So
just
similar
want
to a human, like we were just talking about early.
Precisely.
So like we were talking about early,
Precisely.
someone that's scared, or as they say, hurt people.
Yes.
People. So I'm gonna bring my fangs out, if we so to speak, if you're
Exactly.
coming at me,
If I'm
just like a
coming
snake,
at you.
just like
Yep.
a snake. So
Just
I
like
use
a snake.
I use fangs.
Yeah. So therapeutically, there's that was awesome.
Thank
You
you.
did it the right way.
You didn't
I,
validate me quick enough.
No, but you're right. So therapeutically, snakes are good with the sensory and the tactile movement.
Right.
Their locomotion on your body, there's nothing that compares to that. Nothing that compares to that. But there's no way of describing what it feels like to hold a snake and have them move. It's a very unique experience, unique to snakes. The trust and bonding when you're interacting with a snake and they're learning your movements and you're learning theirs and you're kind of developing that calmness. And that's how I help snakes to calm down from being aggressive, is I approach them calmly, I approach them gently, I behave in a non-threatening manner. And that's how I approach trauma kids as well. And so I'm not ever trying to say that trauma kids are like reptiles, but there's a way of teaching how to approach a child.
There's almost
with
like an
trauma.
energy between the two.
There can be, yeah.
You know what I'm
could
saying?
describe it
Because
that way
it's
for sure.
Because like I remember, well, it was interesting. My experience was something like that when I was in the Dominican Republic. This is a weird story, but I had met my second ex-wife and we had just met. So I couldn't be the wuss not having the snake on my neck because she had it first and she's from the island. So she was a little bit more. So I did some things that I probably was scared out of my mind, but I'm never going to admit to. I did right now.
Nice job.
I think I'm admitting it now.
Yeah.
But like, so it was on me and I'm smiling and this snake is going, but it got to a point that, and I will get you there because I was obviously for other intents and purposes trying to hold the snake, but it got to a euphoria because after you go through that uncomfortable time, you know, it actually, and I kept it longer than I anticipated.
Oh,
you know
I'm
what
not
I'm
gonna
saying?
die.
Yeah. And
I haven't been swallowed yet,
And
and regurgitated and swallowed again. Like
right, I'm like, I still got a shot. Me and the
Yeah.
snake are like, you still got a shot,
what
kid.
he's doing.
Yeah, he's like, you're looking good. Keep going.
No, that's awesome.
Snake is a wingman.
Yeah. And, you know, in doing therapy, one of the topics we talk about in therapy is the fight or flight response.
Right.
And we do have fight or flight response. So in therapy with kids, we kind of use our hand as an analogy. So we have a brainstem, and our brainstem is fight or flight. And then we have a midbrain, which is our emotional complex.
Right.
And then we have our outside brain, our cerebral cortex and stuff, that's our thinking brain.
Mm-hmm.
So when our brain is functioning, we're thinking, we're operating, we're problem solving, executive functioning, cause and effect. When we get triggered for whatever reason, our lid flips, and now we're in our emotion brain, and we're not thinking. We're functioning on emotion. And then if we are sensing perceived danger for whatever reason, we're in our fight or flight responses. And kids do that a lot. We all do that a lot. If you're on an airplane and the alarms go off and the oxygen drops, we're in our fight or flight mode right now.
I was about just turbulence going up.
Yeah, I know,
That's
right?
all I needed.
Flying is terrifying. But I'm cool with it. I actually love flying right now, but I remember being terrified of it.
Good times.
Like roller coasters, I wouldn't even go on until I was in high school. They terrified me.
Yeah.
First
First time I went on a roller coaster,
but
press a girl.
yeah, oh, I had that same euphoria. I'm like, I was scared of this. This is wild.
Yeah, I was like, wait.
I think
oh
I
my
was
God,
more
I
afraid
love
of
this.
throwing up than I was of being.
And embarrassing myself.
And so snakes can teach fight or flight response, because even the most aggressive snake, they're not like, I'm going to screw this guy up.
Right.
I can't wait to bite this dude in the face. They're not having meetings in the morning. Hey, the sun's out. How many kids are you going to bite today?
Right.
5. Yeah, we're not doing that. And so I even tell kids, like, if snakes could talk, their words would be, please don't hurt me. Please leave me alone. Please go away from me. I have a family.
Right.
But if the
Or
flight
enjoy
doesn't
me.
work, they're going to fight, you know? And
Or
that's-
enjoy me.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like us as humans, as you said. And I love that you. So I got to ask this question then, and I don't mean to digress too much, but
No, you're cool.
why did you pick reptiles? Like, I know you said you love the dinosaurs. So you could have done, like, one thing that people have done is you love the dinosaurs, you love the snakes, and then that's your hobby, and then mental health is your profession. You know
And
what I'm saying?
that's how it was for a long time in my life.
Okay. So how did you marry
it was a lot
the two
of
ideas?
separation. I've raised reptiles since I was a kid. I remember being in high school and I had a room full of reptiles. I got a Burmese python when I was like 15 or 16 years
How
old.
much was that?
It was like $100.
Yeah, way
They're-
less than you'd think.
Reptiles are not the expensive part. The expensive part is the cage and the food
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. There are expensive reptiles, but
Because you always see in the movies too, along with that, reputation of reptiles.
yeah.
Oh, got the exotic animals, and the evil guy is
Yeah.
getting the.
I can show you a
horrible,
$10,000
degenerate
snake.
people that keep reptiles
Right.
as pets.
I can
Right.
also show you snakes that people can't give away. So, like,
Right.
Yeah.
you get both extremes in the reptile.
Got it.
And I remember doing, I was even 17 or 18 years old, bringing reptiles to the local elementary school and
Oh, is
teaching
that-
kids about reptiles. And just, kids get excited to learn about reptiles. They're
Yeah.
enthusiastic and they're eager to learn. And I just, my wife started a reptile rescue in 2021. We both volunteered for a reptile rescue before that. So if you can't keep your pet anymore, we could take them in, we can make sure they're healthy, and we find an adoptive home for them.
That's cool.
But we strictly do reptiles. And in teaching about reptiles and rescuing reptiles, I just kept seeing the similarities. Meeting a child who's been through some traumatic experiences and how it affects their behavior and function of those behaviors, and helping a kid feel protected. A child that's never had a healthy adults to take care of them is like, I got to do this myself.
Right.
And even a 5-year-old kid is going to be manipulative and aggressive because they don't trust adults are going to take care of them. They need to take care of themselves. And reptiles who have been through adverse experiences and have not been socialized
Right.
are going to be aggressive. They're going to be, hard to tame. And the interactions are similar. So again, I'm not trying to say that let's treat kids like reptiles, but the approach is the same. Approaching them, being gentle, being safe, not giving off that energy that I'm harmful. With a child, not being judgmental, coming in and being positive and being interactive. And like I said earlier, just listening and validating a kid's feelings. That sounds really scary.
Yeah.
Even if we don't think it's scary, it sounds like you were really mad about that thing that happened. And I just I'm like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to start using these reptiles and not talk about the kids, but talk about the reptile. So
in like a therapy, right?
in a therapy thing. So I'm doing a couple different things now. And one is a presentation called Reptiles and Resiliency,
Okay.
which I'm actually going to be back here at this library in 2 weeks on May 21st at
Waukesha.
5:30. What's that?
I'm making sure they know it's the Waukesha Public Library.
Waukesha Public Library. You have to sign up for this talk through the United for Waukesha Resiliency Center. But I'm doing the group for the kids that were at the parade in 2021. And let's use that as an example. Let's say there was a child that was here at the parade and saw the incident that happened.
Okay.
He might not feel comfortable talking about it. He
Right.
might not want to process the feelings because he can't make sense of them. He doesn't understand them. And even if he could understand them, he can't put them to words. He doesn't know the right words to use. And so I'm going to act out instead because I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I know I'm scared. I don't want to go to the city anymore. I don't want to be in my car anymore. I don't want to get hurt. So if mom and dad want to go to the store, I'm going to scream, I'm going to kick, I'm going to hide in my room, I'm going to run away because I don't want to put myself in danger anymore. I'm terrified of this. That kid's not going to sit down with a stranger and say, I was at the parade, it was really traumatizing. I'm really scared, I don't want to get hurt. Some kids might, but some kids aren't gonna. And kids, if they can't say it, they're gonna act it. If I can't tell you I'm angry, I'm gonna make you angry and behave to make you angry, and then I'm gonna see that now that's how I feel. How I'm making you feel right now is how I feel. And kids can communicate in their behaviors. And so for a child, it might be safer instead of saying, you were at the parade, tell me what you saw. How is it affecting you? Are you having bad dreams? I can bring a bearded dragon to a group, which is a really cool lizard from Australia, and they're spiky and they have spikes on their chins. And I can say bearded dragons are awesome pets, but they have a really cool defense mechanism. If they get scared or angry, they puff their bodies up and they spike their beards up and it turns jet black and it looks like a beard. And that's where they get their name from, right? What makes a bearded dragon scared in the wild? A bird that might want to eat it, being chased by a cat or something like that. So they're getting scared and they're puffing up is a defense mechanism to prevent themselves from getting hurt. So we talk about that in the group. And then that's a safer conversation than to talk about myself and my feelings, and it can help kids connect the dot. Okay, so I had this bad thing happen, and now I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling afraid, I'm feeling nervous. These are the feeling words that I can attach to these feelings. And I've had parents say, like, ever since coming to that reptile group, my child's talking about what happened and talking about what they saw because the group was able to help them kind of put the words together and kind of connect the dots.
And it's interesting you say that because
crazy cool.
I think it goes back to that energy conversation I was talking. They share energy. They can share, oh my God, I don't need to say anything. And this reptile can feel what I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't need to say anything. And then I can understand it. I'm puffing up like a bearded lizard.
Yeah, we can do that.
You know what I mean?
Turtles and tortoises get scared and they go in their shells.
Great
analogy for a coping skill.
But we say that.
Yeah.
Oh, that kid's going in their shell.
Yeah.
We say that all the time.
That is he's protecting himself. What does he feel scared about? What's making him nervous right now that he feels he needs to go in his shell?
What it's interesting about, especially in teaching, I've seen teachers go, oh God, roll their eyes and go, he's going in his shell again. Like,
yeah.
Okay, I don't know why that makes you mad. Like, why are you, I mean, I get it. You have to teach this child, but they're not going to learn anything if they're going in their shell.
And the conversation needs to be, what's happening? Are you overstimulated? Yes. Is it too loud? Are the lights crazy and making your eyes all messed up? Are you, it's hard.
Home?
I don't want to think about social studies because I'm worried that my dad's going to hit my mom again when I get home.
Hey, I'll say
the electric's going to be cut off, or we don't have any food.
Or one of the worst things that happened to me personally is I had a student who told me that she asked, she was screaming, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she was completely disrupted. She goes, "I need to talk to you in the hallway." I'm like, "Okay." And I went, and her mom was a prostitute, and her mother was beat almost to death, and her father was in prison.
Yeah.
She was only 14 years old, so she had no idea how to get herself food. She didn't know how she was going to live.
Terrifying.
I mean, I'm like, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we need to get some help. Like, I can't even handle this by myself.
But look how cool it was she came to you for that.
Oh, yeah, after screaming at me, yeah. No, but I don't mind. As weird as it sounds, I don't mind when people scream at me because I know it's not about me.
It's not about you, no. And it's the emotion.
Oh, yeah. I look past, me personally.
You're one of the few adults that can look past the screaming and listen to the message. And I think that's important for us to do. But I also try to teach kids, hey, if you want an adult to listen, let's take a deep breath. Let's think about what to say. Let's not swear. Let's not scream, because adults are going to catch on to that and not hear what you're trying to say.
Well, that's
how cool that she trusted you enough to do that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. But also it goes back to what I'm saying. Kids and adults aren't that much different.
No, we're not.
We're not at all. And that's why I know we were going to, like, marital relationships as well as, friend relationships as well as parent-child relationships. We tend to sometimes act in the same emotional way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, we do.
And that's where the reptiles is really bringing that functionality into it. But because everything you're saying, I've had a scenario. I've been, like I said earlier in the couple episodes, I've been teaching for 11 years. I have seen some of the worst situations for kids. Yeah. I've seen some very actually affluent kids feel the same way some of those kids that are going through what we would call ACEs or traumas, but they go through the same thing because they're ignored.
Yeah.
And because mom and dad are always working or traveling, dad ends up having an affair with the secretary, and or mom ends up having an affair with the neighbor because dad's not home and she doesn't get the attention she was looking for from her husband.
Kids like structure and kids like discipline, and kids will tell you, I don't want to get in trouble, but they don't mind getting in. That sounds weird, but like they want that structure. They want you to say no. They want that limitation.
Correct.
But they need that attention. I would rather have you screaming and yelling at me than have you ignoring me.
Bad press is still press.
Well, yeah, right, exactly.
And in politics, I've learned.
So the reptile therapy group just kind of was a little brainchild of mine, and I started it in Kenosha with the kids that we've worked with, and it's just been really amazing. Just to connect with kids and to validate their emotions and to validate their experiences. And teachers will do it a lot. I'm guilty of doing it myself when a kid's misbehaving and we say, use your words.
Yes.
We say use your words all the time. But using your words is a multi-step challenge for kids. We're already begging the question that a kid understands what their body is feeling and understands the emotions and the physical reaction that the emotion has. That they understand that what triggered it and what made them mad. That they know the word. And then they could even, hey, this kid made me mad. This is why I got mad. This is how I'm feeling. When you're upset, it doesn't come out the brain and through the mouth. Like there's so many steps for a child in using your words, and we just automatically go, use your words. Well, we have to teach
then I'm fine.
I'm
perfectly fine.
I'm going to use my words. Go fuck yourself. Those are my words. You tell me to use my words.
Well, I was going to say, it's even difficult for some
I've
adults.
had that happen to me. You said to use my words.
That's the daily.
So many bleeps, so much editing.
Sorry. But we need to teach the kids to use their words. We need to teach the kids to slow their bodies down to where they can think again. Because our lives are flipped. We're not in our thinking brain. We got to calm our emotion brains down to get back in our thinking brain again.
Right.
And then we have to, what made you mad? What are the words to use? Let's practice using the words. So whatever, I got on a tangent, but using your words is another pet peeve.
Oh, I can't agree with you more. But I love how because there's so many things on this planet that we can use to help from a therapeutic perspective that I like water. I've seen people use water. There was something I saw on TV where if you ignore water, it becomes dirty and undrinkable. But if you talk to the water every day,
that
it actually gets
very strange. I've never heard that before.
Oh no, it's something
that's really wild.
It's based on there's a Japanese
there it is.
okay. And it's about freezing water.
Okay.
That's
pretty cool.
I think the experiment is writing hate on one glass and love on the other, and then freezing them, and the crystalline structure that forms in the ice is different.
That's really wild.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I meant.
That's really wild. That's pretty cool.
Right. It's a really great illustration to kind of show your words carry weight. Your words matter. They change.
They do. And how you say things matters.
Right, like I did before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'll do this example with kids. I could say the same exact words, but the nonverbal communication changes the entire message. Mm-hmm. And it's the difference between me saying, hey, that's a nice shirt, and me saying, that's a nice shirt.
Right.
I said the same exact words, but all the body language is very different.
So words have meaning, but what you feel behind the word is what's extremely important. And so like I was saying, there's so many different things on this planet we can use to help us understand each other better. And sometimes we don't use it, and that's why this reptile concept is absolutely beautiful.
It's really cool, because then like a kid who doesn't want to be in therapy, I'm going to say, hey, let's go. You want to go see the tortoises? Tortoises are really cool. I love tortoises. They're my favorite reptile. Let's go to the tortoises. Hey, they're cool. Did you know that when they get scared, they go on their shells? I get that scared too sometimes. I don't have a shell on my back, but I'll go put on headphones and listen to music, and it helps me calm down. Do you ever do something like that? It's such a creative way of inadvertently, indirectly. I like indirect therapy. I like our kids don't think they're in therapy. They don't think that I'm doing therapy with them. What did you and Bill do today? Oh, we went and played basketball, and we were talking about, how my stomach gets hurt when I get nervous at school, and da-da-da-da. Like, if you do it indirectly, the kids aren't going to be defensive to it.
Goes back to what Justin said, treat them like a human.
Absolutely.
That's a minor detail that we forget sometimes.
Yeah. And kids also, they don't want that either. Well, how are you feeling today, Jimmy? No, Jimmy wants to be like, hey, how's it going?
What up, Jimmy?
Yeah.
How you doing, bro?
What's up, Jimmy? How you doing, man? Good to see you, dude.
Yeah. What up? Fisted. Let's go.
I had a kid on the autism spectrum that said his number one trigger is when people placate him.
Oh,
and
God,
have
yeah.
that baby, like,
Mhm.
don't baby talk me. I'm 13 years old. I'm short, but I'm 13. Don't talk to me like I'm a baby.
Oh, I hate when adults do
Yeah.
that to me.
Yeah.
Like, it literally happened to me
I
recently.
only do it to babies and puppies and really cute tegus.
That's fair.
Tegus a kind of lizard, a big,
Oh, okay.
giant lizard with big old cheeks.
The first lizard to be observed craving human interaction.
Yeah.
A tegu?
Yeah.
You
I said it
can-
right too.
Yeah, you did.
That's really
They're from
good.
South America.
They
They're
can learn their
found in South
name. You can
America.
house train them for the most part.
A lot of people say so, and I would argue that that's probably true.
That's why I
They're
say
pretty
for the most
smart
part.
answer.
I've
Pretty
seen,
smart animals.
I've seen them in person react to their name.
I've seen them seek out humans.
Right.
That's pretty
I've seen
cool.
that.
Yeah,
It's
they're pretty
neat.
wild. They also were observed to be mildly warm-blooded.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like a warm-blooded reptile. So they have to use the sun to heat their bodies, but once their bodies are heated, they sustain
Like,
that
yeah.
heat longer than most reptiles do. And their dens in the wild have a 10-degree higher temperature than the normal temperatures are, because there's some way of their body being able to reserve that body heat.
That's so cool.
There's so many cool things to just learn about reptiles too.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, like you said it too, like reptiles are my thing.
Right.
And they're my jam.
Right.
But if Pokemon was my thing, which it is, or like if basketball and sports are your thing, there's therapy in that. And you play basketball?
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in you meeting some kids that maybe are having some behavior issues at school and taking them to the basketball court, finding something they're good at, finding something they like to do,
Sounds like
can be a coping skill. Hey, you're getting pissed off. Let's go to the basketball court and get that physical energy out. That social practice of sports. Sports are so incredible for kids. Like, don't overwork them where they
No.
have like a schedule. They're 40 hours a week. They're in school and sports, and then they don't
Right.
get to have a life. But
Well, I think we lose track of the fact of that's what I like about the reptile thing as well. We lose track sometimes in sports that it's a game and it's fun.
yeah,
Because in this society, sometimes I think we take sports way too seriously. So actually, when I was
those viral videos of those
oh god, so one of the
softball dads beating up other softball dads from the
Yeah,
opposing team because
oh,
the kid got a
God.
strike.
I'll tell you this. I know we got to go soon, but I want to tell this story. So I was a soccer coach at Waukesha South, and Arrowhead is the big school. They win everything, right? Basketball, soccer, football. They people in the NFL. They're phenomenal, right? So Waukesha South had not won a conference game in I think it was 6-7 years when I took over, right? And they were like our first or second game. So we're going up against Arrowhead, right?
Okay.
And we are getting killed at half. It was 8-2. One of our better players actually scored a goal with 5 seconds left. It was 8-3. And they come over at halftime because this is the same story, different day. This was my amazing halftime speech. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Hey, you guys aren't playing too bad. They won a football game? Go score 9 goals and have some fun with it. And I walked away. And the kids were like, what? We're not going to get screamed at? And I just sat on the bench and I just sat there and got some water and just stared at the sun. I remember all this. They go out.
Don't stare at the sun.
Why? It was really pretty and it was at night. It was
Now
going
I'm
down.
really confused.
It was going
The
down.
sun? He was staring at the sun at night.
No, it was the evening. It was going down. It was
Sounds like a
7
Smashing Pumpkins song.
Oh, it was a sunset.
There you go.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anyway, it ended up happening.
He's crepuscular.
All right.
I'll explain that word.
That's fine. So anyway, we end up tying them. We end up beating them 8-7. We end up tying 8-8.
Nice.
And it was one of the greatest games in the conference history.
Because you were encouraging and not berating, maybe?
And 30 seconds of you're doing fine. Go have fun.
Yeah,
Just
go have fun.
have
You're fine. Yeah.
What's the worst that's gonna happen?
I'm a giant fan of that show, Ted Lasso.
Oh my god! Yes,
I love that show. But he always says, be curious, not judgmental.
Right.
And what an amazing mantra for all of us.
I
is be
love
curious.
that. I love
Even with someone who does a really bad thing. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Well, I wasn't. I was emotional. I'm broke or whatever. But just that helps to rewire and helps to problems.
One question I always answer: how does that serve you? How did that help you do what you were trying to do? Whether you were angry or frustrated, what does that do for you?
Be curious, not judgmental?
No. That's the question I ask instead. To kids, if they do something.
Yes. I thought you were asking me.
No.
That helps me so much in navigating when I get caught up in traffic.
No. No, I go to the kids. How does that serve you? How is that helpful for you?
Yeah.
The anger helped me get this out. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
How do we rechannel that now?
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
Before we run out of time, I have one last question I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
And it was actually a
I feel
question
like
that
we
I was.
scratched the surface of things. But
Oh, we could have you back for probably 2 or 3 more episodes. It would be fine.
deal. I'm down.
Well, and you can bring a snake next
I
time.
will
It'll
bring
be
a snake.
perfect.
I want a snake.
The library will allow me. Next time we'll do the. I'll bring the reptiles and we'll do it. We'll do the thing.
I'm in with the thing.
Perfect.
Cool.
But I was talking to people today and I was asking for questions to ask
You
you.
said that. That's
And
cool.
the question that I was given is, how can you tell if one of your ambassador animals might be struggling with their mental health?
Oh, good question.
That is an awesome question. When you spend enough time with something, you learn those behaviors very, very, very well. Parents are experts of their children and experts of knowing if something is off with their kids or knowing if something was wrong. And even if the kids don't, we as pet owners know if our dog or cat are sick. Reptiles are more stoic; they hide illness. But if you've grown up around reptiles and you've raised them and you've bred them and you've rescued them, you learn their behaviors. And so,
Just to clarify on that, and this is partially my experience too with my work with reptiles, behaviors isn't so much as a defensive position or trying to bite at you, because that's what somebody might think of at first when they're thinking of a reptile's behaviors.
yeah,
It could be something as simple as their breathing pattern changes.
yeah, tongue flicks, yeah, and it's learning that a snake that's stressed out or a lizard that's stressed out has longer tongue flicks for duration of time or shorter flicks. It's knowing their behavior and knowing when they're stressed out or knowing when they're overwhelmed. If I'm at a birthday party and I'm walking around with a snake and she's tensing up, okay, maybe this isn't a good idea. Hissing is normal. Snakes are going to hiss, and it's just kind of like them going. But then they'll take a break. If I go to grab a snake out of the cage and it's like cocking its head back, you're not going to come with me today.
Right.
But also I just rotate animals and I give some animals a break too, or I try not to book too many parties, just inherently woven in as a break. But it's knowing their behaviors, and if they're stressed out, limiting interaction. Hey, I normally let kids hold the snake, but she's not feeling it today, so I'm going to hold the head and you can hold the body. But it's just learning their behaviors and recognizing their behaviors, and not attributing it to aggression.
I like the way that you talked about that, because it's almost like people, right? When you see a person you don't know on the street, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what their mental health is like. You don't know what their challenges are.
Right.
Now, some of the people you see on the street might be displaying some sort of behavior that would let you know, hey, stay away from me, or I'm a danger, or something.
Yeah.
But the grand majority of people that you run into, you got no idea what's going on with them. You don't know what they're dealing with. And that's the same for reptiles, it seems.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know you talked a little bit about the details of your event coming up at the library soon.
Yeah.
Just wanted you to reiterate that one more time, and then a spotlight if you want to.
Yeah, this was really cool, you guys. Rico, it was awesome to meet you, and it was really fun to be here. I own WPS Reptiles in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I have a website, WPSReptiles.com, where I do your conventional reptile education. I do birthday parties. I do school assemblies. I do scouting events. There is a fee. I don't charge for travel. I kind of have a set rate. But all the money goes back into the animals. So any money that I raise, by charging for a birthday party or a school assembly, goes to pay the rent, the electric bill at the facility. It buys animals food. Pays for the vet bills. I'm not keeping money. I'm doing it because I love this, and it's not.
Yeah.
I have a job that pays me. This is for the animals. But WPSReptiles.com is my website to book a birthday party. Emailing me through that website at WPSReptiles@gmail.com, inquiring about the reptile groups. I contract with United for Waukesha Resiliency Center, which is an incredible program here, started after the parade. So if your loved one, if your family member or friend was involved at or interacted with or was impacted either directly or indirectly by that parade, they can reach out to the United for Waukesha Resiliency Center, and the services there are free. It's funded through NAMI, which is the National Association for Mental Illness. And so families can access support from the Resiliency Center at no charge. And I do a couple of different things. So starting in July, I'm doing a 4-week reptile group. It's going to meet on, I think, Wednesday nights. It's going to be 5 to 6 on Wednesday nights. But you have to sign up for that group through the Resiliency Center website. And then on May 21st, I'll be back here at the library doing an hour-long presentation on resiliency and how reptiles kind of are ambassadors of resiliency and recovering from trauma and adapting and evolving, and how we can kind of learn through that. Cool. And I own Impact Child and Family Therapies in Kenosha.
That's
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you so
This
much for
was so
coming. This was
cool.
fun.
We
Thanks
definitely
again.
could have talked for like 7 hours.
And before we completely wrap up, something we always finish with on the Feronus podcast is a shout out for the 988 Lifeline.
Yes,
Whether you're
100%.
Whether you're facing mental health struggles, emotional distress, alcohol or drug use concerns, or just need somebody to talk to, their caring counselors are here for you. You are not alone. Call, text, or chat anytime.
Yeah,
Okay.
the 988 has been an awesome resource.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you
Thank you.
again.
Yeah.
Dude, it was awesome. to
Good
meet you,
times.
Rico. It was so good to see you, Justin.
Likewise.
All right.